It's Wildcard weekend, one of my favorite weekends of the year, and you are very welcome to the Matchbook NFL Betting Podcast. And Happy New Year, of course. And Happy New Year to my three most favorite people every Wednesday throughout the NFL regular season. I know into the playoffs. Top right of your screen, you can see Mr. Drew Dinsick in the Californian Rose Bowl sun. Bottom left, you can see Adam Chernoff. And the bottom right, you can see Brad Allen. Guys, we don't have Rose Bowl sun behind us, but we will drive on as much as we can. Guys, very quick takeaways from last weekend. Drew, how was it for you, sir?
Oh, the most entertaining week 17 that I can remember in all my years handicapping the NFL. It was great. Then the San Francisco-Seattle game especially. I took a lot of positives away for Seattle out of that performance. I thought we talked about it on the pod last week. Dwayne Brown could have been a problem, and not having him out there for and the pass rush that San Francisco was bringing to the table, but they matched up well. Russell Wilson is playing, kind of peak quarterback right now, and I think kind of opens up an opportunity to grab a little value on Seattle to take the NFC here.
Adam Chernoff, another split on insights. Ikes.
I don't know what to say. Anything I put up in that column is destined to split, and I have to go back and see, but I'm sure it's 12 to 13 1-1 splits now on the season within the column.
You're nothing but consistent, sir. Brad Allen, you went on the Jameis bandwagon last weekend. Can I just say one thing about Jameis, though? That total, he is such good at getting these totals up. He takes it away. He's so good. 30 interceptions, 30 touchdowns. Unfortunately, Prof, you slipped into the red on insights.
Yeah, mate. Horrible week. Obviously, Jameis let us down. They're probably the better team with that one. The under in the Kansas City game, I felt quite aggrieved by. There was 2 80-yard touchdowns in that one. One from Damian Williams, one in a return, and then another touchdown right at the end just to push it over. So I feel like that was the right side, but we done our dough.
Yeah, what are you going to do? Right, let's move on to Wildcard weekend, guys. Bills, Texans first up on Saturday. Current betting, as you can see, live on Matchbook. Texans 2.5-point favorite, 43.5 is the total. Money line 2.33. You can back the Bills. Very popular bet at Matchbook. The start of the week 1.72. You can back the Texans. And Drew Dinsick, I'll start with you here first. This line opened, I think, for about 2.5 minutes, 3.5 with the Bills getting the start. Hammered back down 2.5 right now. But we've got so many question marks over the Texans with injuries. We're hoping that Will Fuller is going to be back. Well, they're very much hoping. J.J. Watt is also maybe going to be back. Where are you seeing the line there? Because everyone wants to be at Buffalo on the start of the week.
I don't get that. I really don't get it. I'm sure the fact that I don't get it, Brad, will make a very compelling case for the Bills. But here we are.
He won't. Spoiler alert, he won't.
Oh, okay. So no. I think my fair price on this, if Will Fuller is healthy, is Houston -4. So I'm happily taking Texans -2.5 here with the likelihood that he'll be out there. Huge potential mismatch for the Bills because, and I guess if you want to break it down, the Bills have had an incredible pass defense this year. They've been coached extremely well. They still have a very, very significant minus at the quarterback position, in my opinion. Josh Allen, does not have the goods still at this point in his career. Maybe he'll get there one day, but I'm certainly not seeing anywhere close to enough deep accuracy out of Josh Allen where he will be fundamentally able to make the Texans hurt where they can be hurt. Because, you brought up the injury situations for, the Texans. I think one of the ones that has kind of gone quietly under the radar, they lost their starting safety, Gibson. And if you had a more accurate deep throwing, deep ball from Josh Allen, then yeah, the Bills would be live in this game. But, he's not going to be able to really make them pay it, in my opinion. They're going to have to lean pretty significantly on their run game if they're expecting to get, to move the ball down the field. And, the Texans can do a pretty decent run stop. And I think this sets up pretty well for a Buffalo Bills team total under. Whereas the Bills' pass defense gets lauded for just being this unstoppable unit, they played probably the second easiest or easiest slate of pass offenses this year. They just really weren't tested very significantly. The Thanksgiving Day game against Dak and company, they were able to pass all over this unit because they had multiple receivers to go to. And if you have Deshaun Hopkins out there, sure, he can get completely locked down by Trey White. Trey White, in my opinion, I have him basically tied with Stephon Gilmore as the top cover corner in the league right now. But on the other side, they were getting solid play out of Wallace, and looks like he will be unavailable after taking a non-contact injury in the Week 17 game, meaningless game against the Jets. I don't know why you had why you had some important starters out there for Buffalo's defense in that spot, but they did, and they lose an important guy. If Fuller can go, I think that makes a pretty significant difference for the Deshaun Watson and the Texans offense, and I can kind of see them getting a pretty comfortable win here, keeping the Bills under about 17 points.
Prof, you mentioned it on your Insights article today, which is just up in the past hour. Generally, a lot of what Drew said there around the schedule of the Bills, and they may be a bit inflated. And you look at a lot of the key metrics, the Bills match up exceptionally favorably against the Texans in a spot. But you're in agreement with Drew. You're on the Texans here.
Yeah, so I think that defensive schedule one is the one I'm always banging the drum for. They've had literally the easiest schedule of opposition, and then this Houston offense with Fuller, the exact EPA splits are in the Insights article, but it is a huge chasm, and it's been like that for 3 years now. When Fuller is on the field, yards per attempt, EPA, success rate, everything just goes right up because suddenly you've got that deep threat to account for. You've got to have a safety deep. And it does stress the defense. And then they should be able to run the ball as well. Houston 8th in offensive rushing success rate. The Bills are below average rush defense by DVOA. I think the Houston are going to move the ball. I would like them above their team total. And so can Josh Allen keep up? We might have JJ Watt back, which is huge. Well, I was saying earlier, I've seen I think Rufus Peabody was talking about, he's the second most valuable defensive player in the league, worth about 2 points in his player model. And the pass rush win rate, everything is bottom of the league without JJ Watt, and it's about middle of the pack with him. And then Josh Allen and this offense, 25th graded by Pro Football Focus. I don't really see how they're going to keep up.
Adam Chernoff, did we ever think we would see the day where Will Fuller was worth a point or two in a handicap? But it seems a strange one to me, Adam, because we're watching Will Fuller the last couple of weeks, even when he was fit, and he just always seems to be bloody injured all the damn time. What are you thinking with this one? Because it was a very real move on Buffalo at the start of the week.
Yeah, no question about that move early in the week. And I think Fuller's always sort of had that value within this offense, and it's really just becoming more and more popular that's the case. But what Houston does exceptionally well is play matchup football. And when they have these three wide receivers out there, Fuller, Stills, and Watson in the backfield with Hawkins on the other side, it forces a double team somewhere on the field because you can't single cover all three of those guys. And they're extremely good at scheming to the opposite side of where that double team is, isolating that and finding space on the other side. So if you have speed within that equation, which is where Fuller comes in, that's where the big impact is. I guess I'm a little bit surprised to see how popular it really has become in terms of people discussing how important Fuller is to this game. I'm also surprised that Levi Wallace was out at Bills practice this morning on the field. He went off with what looked to be a pretty gruesome non-contact injury against the Jets, was carted off, but now he's on the practice field. There's question marks, to say the least, between the status of Fuller as well as Wallace. They're both out in practice playing and participating to a limited extent, but we're not going to know what their percentage is, and I don't expect either of them to come out and make any sort of statement regarding their health either. So it becomes a bit of a mystery, but certainly if you're betting on this game, you want to look at Houston and Fuller. If he's healthy, that's going to be a huge part of your handicap. And then on the other side, if you're betting Buffalo, you're really going to want that cornerback number 2 in there, because without him, it just magnifies that matchup football advantage that Houston likes to play. And you have to give Bill O'Brien, as much as we like to knock him, credit for finding those advantages within the scheme in those specific matchups. But the one thing that concerns me a little bit here, J.J. Watt, he is going to be back, but still there's those issues in the secondary for Houston. And Buffalo, I talk about the Jared Goff betting checklist quite a bit. Josh Allen has a similar one where he's facing a bottom third secondary. Games this season, he's against Miami, Cincinnati. They put up a lot of points, 21, 31, 37 in those 3 games. And if you want to go a little bit further, Houston's 27th, Cincinnati 30th, Miami 32. But if we just look at bottom third overall, you can add 2 other games in there where Buffalo put up 28 and 26 points against those bottom third secondaries. Those are 5 of the best games for Josh Allen this entire season. And there's also the best offensive output for the Bills as well. So it's not like the Bills have struggled in games where the secondary has been the weakest. And it really depends how effective J.J. Watt can be. He's active. He's going to be on the field. But let's see how big of an impact he has. Certainly a huge part of the handicap if you're betting on Houston.
Brad Allen, you had something else you wanted to add there, mate?
Yeah, you might remember the game earlier in the season where the Carolina Panthers went into Houston and shut them down pretty effectively. I think about 4.8 yards per attempt, one of the worst outputs all season from Deshaun Watson. And obviously, Sean McDermott was, I think, defensive coordinator with Ron Rivera for about 5 years. So I think it was Mike Sando saying this week that McDermott's going to be on the phone to Rivera all week, finding out exactly how they did that. I think they played a lot of cover 4 in that game. So I would expect we might see some of that cover 4 rolled out. I mean, it hasn't changed my handicap in the game. I'm still back Houston, but it might be, if someone's looking at the under, I think that might push them a little bit further that way as well.
And Drew Dinsick, just on that under, because this seems to be climbing up. I mean, it was a very low total that it opened. What do we have here? It opened about 38.5, 39ish. It's trending up, but I'm kind of really hoping that it gets to 44.5, so I can kind of come back in there. Would you kind of talk me out of that, or would you?
No. I think the under is the right play here. Even at 43.5, I know you're on the wrong side of 44. But a couple of things are working to your advantage here. Number one, if the Bills defense is vulnerable, again, we talked about, they haven't played anyone good, but when they have been out there playing, they've given up a lot of yards on the ground. They have kind of a soft, squishy middle. You can run on this team. And I think that plays into what, Bill O'Brien would like to do. I think he would like to dictate the game. I think when he can get his ground game going, he feels a little more comfortable. He feels a little bit more able to just kind of, okay, we're gonna take our 3 yards, and let Deshaun Watson do something awesome on 3rd and 4. And that's an approach that I think can work against this Bills defense. And you can play a little bit of ball control. You can play a little bit of win time of possession pretty comfortably in this matchup, in my opinion. And Bill O'Brien, when the stakes are high, he tends to play not to lose. Like, he will make the decision of, I'm not going to take it, do a risky field goal attempt here. I'm more than happy pinning the ball on the 1 and, letting my defense, throw them out there. Like, he will take a couple of points off the board himself for the Texans, which I think leans itself into an under as well. And the Adam's point about Wallace being out at practice is interesting. I had pretty much assumed that he was going to be, gone, and that Fuller might be a home run threat. And that was one of the only things that was kind of keeping me from really getting more involved in the under. But this sets up pretty well for a pretty strategic defensive matchup, I think. And Trey White and Deshaun and Hopkins is pretty much a wash, I think. I don't think Hopkins is going to be wide open, making lots of yards after catch. And if Trey White can single cover him effectively, then they can use safety help on Fuller. And, that definitely neutralizes some of the potential for big plays in the Houston passing game. And I think, I'm not counting on Watt really being a meaningful factor in this one. Anything he provides, I think, is gravy. Houston's pass defense has quietly been a heck of a lot better since they made that trade with Oakland to kind of shore up their cornerback situation. And in a lot of the big games this year, we've seen them play up in the pass defense. So I think this is a good spot for the under, even at 43.5.
So, guys, I think 6 out of 9 last week too, by the way, guys. Nice job there, 66% batting average. What are we looking at play-wise? Or -2.5? Because I've heard so many people that started this week saying, okay, we should probably wait until close to the kickoff. But let's be honest, if Will Fuller is confirmed as a go, that line is going to get up to 3 again. So I think 2.5 is general. Are we happy enough for that, guys? Even if Fuller doesn't go, I don't think this line falls off a cliff if Fuller doesn't go. So I'm thinking 2.5 is still a pretty good look. Yeah. Agreement?
It's got to close 3 or higher, in my opinion.
Okay, -2.5. So we may have a look at that total as well on the under if it gets higher as well. Right, let's move on to Saturday's later game. The Titans and the Patriots. Current betting, as you see on screen now, the Pats -4.5. 44 is the total. Money line, you can back the Tennessee Titans 3.06. The red hot Tennessee Titans, all the momentum with them right now, and you can back the Pats at 1.48. Brad Allen, start with you here first. Patriots held for 3 out of 9 on 3rd down against that mighty Dolphins defense in week 17. Tennessee's defense, not that great either, but I mean, it's going to be hard to make the case for the Patriots here. The other guys may be thinking the Patriots. It's really going to be really hard for me to part my money this weekend in the Pats. Where are you on this one?
Yes, I stayed away from the side because if you take in the longer term to account, I think pretty much every modeler is going to be on the Patriots here. If you look at the long term numbers. because they've just been so good for so long. And obviously, Tannehill has never performed to this level before in his career. He's probably going to regress somewhat. To what level? How much was Adam Gase holding him back? I don't know. So obviously, since he's started, they are third in the league in points, second in EPA added. He's top of quarterback metrics like PFF grading, completion expectation, over average. I think the Titans will be able to move the ball. I think they'll be able to continue doing what they've been doing to some extent in recent weeks. I'm not scared of this Patriots defense. I think, again, it is a bit of a paper tiger like the Bills. Second easiest schedule of opposing offenses is the Patriots after the Bills. So I think the Titans will move the ball and put up some points. And I think probably Brady will come back and have success doing the same. So since Adoree Jackson, the cornerback, went out, this Titans passing defense is 30th in success rate allowed. And obviously the Patriots do the success rate style offense, move the ball, move the chains. They do that well. And they play quickly as well. So, yeah, I expect to see these two go up and down the field quite a lot. I haven't checked the weather, actually, so that would be worth looking into. But that would be where I would lean at present.
Adam Chernoff, Patriots, Foxborough, playoffs. It's rare a wildcard weekend. This line normally would strike me before that everyone would want to be with the Patriots, but the line seems to be going with the Titans. But I think you might be on the opposite side of this, that you like the Pats.
Well, we saw this last year, not in wildcard weekend, but divisional weekend, where a very popular and trendy team in the Los Angeles Chargers went into Foxborough, and New England somewhat stumbled down the stretch. I believe they lost 2 or 3 of their final 5 or 6 games of the season. There was some doubt. Is this sort of where New England begins to struggle? Is this where they kind of come back down to earth? And then the Chargers go into Baltimore wildcard weekend, and they put on that brilliant defensive performance. Everyone's wowed by them. And that line opened 4.5, was bet down to 3.5, and the Pats were up by 30 at halftime. So it's a very similar dynamic in terms of how this number is shaping up. But I guess I have questions as we look at this. If we're looking at 4.5 right now, I don't know what the sort of consensus home field advantage for Foxborough would be. But for just sake of conversation here on the show, let's say it's 4, right? It's a little bit higher because it's Foxborough in the playoffs. Saturday night, that's usually it's going to be a little bit higher than the standard 3. I don't think that's a stretch to say. And at that point, we're getting to the level where we're looking at these teams as essentially even. The Patriots maybe a half point better than Tennessee, and I'm just not sure I can get to that short of a number. I look at this as 5.5 or 6, and I look at Tennessee. They have the worst secondary in the playoffs, and if we're talking about strength on strength between the Titans offense and the Patriots defense, and weakness on weakness versus the Patriots offense against the Tennessee Titans defense, if we get at a game that's really sort of a stalemate in terms of the price, putting these two teams equal, for me, it's which of these units has the better chance to overperform or play above their average. And to me, that's the Patriots offense in this game. And much like Brad mentioned, those success rate numbers for Tennessee extremely low. Adoree Jackson could well be back for this game, but I don't know when we started rating Adoree Jackson as this huge difference maker within the secondary. And all of a sudden, Logan Ryan, it was been drawing a lot of attention too, as one of the best defensive players in the league. I just don't buy that. The grades don't support it. And we're looking at a Titans secondary. They're 19th in success rate on the season as a whole. They've played the 8th easiest schedule of opponents. So they've been struggling below average against an extremely favorable schedule. And so I look at the Patriots here, as bad as they've been, they're still a top 3rd team in terms of offensive efficiency, as weird as that sounds. They finished the season 14th. So this is going to be a challenge for the Titans, especially within the secondary. If New England can put together any decent game plan moving the football, it's going to be extremely favorable for them against this Titans secondary, which is the worst in the playoffs. And on the other side, Tennessee, with Tannehill under center, they've only played 2 top 10 secondaries for this run that he's been on, where they've been at the top of the league for every number that matters. And those were against Kansas City, where he had his lowest yardage output of the entire season, failed to break 200 yards in that game. And then against Carolina, which I don't really grade as a top 10 secondary, efficiency-wise, that's where they finished. But that was their lowest points output with Tannehill under center as well. So you look at those 2 games where they had to step up in class, they really struggled. And all of a sudden, this first playoff start on the road narrative that typically dictates these markets is getting completely ignored. In fact, it's going the other way. I think there's just value here on New England at 4.5. It's a number I expect to go up. I think we see 5.5 by close, and that's a much better number overall.
Drew Dinsick, before I get to you in a second, Brad, you wanted to come back in on one more thing there, man.
Yeah, just an interesting note I saw this week. So the Patriots have lost 8 games in the last 2 years, I think it is, and 4 of those have been to former Belichick sort of disciples, like Matt Patricia, like these Titans.
And Brian Flores last week.
Brian Flores last week is another one. So I just wonder if they know something about the way Belichick's doing something, or there's less of an air, they're less scared, perhaps. I don't know if there's anything to that, but I just thought it was quite an interesting.
Patriots offense have no weapons. Drew Dinsick, look, there were 17-point favorites at the off last week against the Dolphins. Let's play a kind of a hypothetical game here. Say if they win this game by 20 points, this line is surely closer to 6 and 7 at this stage. Surely.
No way. This line is Chiefs -8.5 or -9, right?
I get you. Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah. Well, you know,
situation because of that loss.
You don't want to say in those regards, like just the public perception is. Apologies, you're bang on there. Go for it.
No, I think the number for the Pats last week was pretty inflated, weirdly, and people assumed that they kind of were going to find their form down the stretch. They hammer the Bengals. You dig into the box score a little bit, that was a misleading result. They beat the Buffalo Bills. That was pretty lucky when you kind of break it down how that played out. They were lucky to get in, get that one home. And I would say this is not a great matchup for them. I don't think there's really any way to slice it. All that said, and actually I meant to add to Brad's point about the former Belichick disciples. Maybe they're just better at disguising their signals and jamming whatever communication devices the Patriots are using to spy on them. But whatever the case is, I think, and weirdly, because I haven't heard this anywhere, and maybe I'm missing something, but like this is entirely possibly Tom Brady's last ever start in Foxborough. Entirely possible. Tom Brady doesn't look 100% healthy. He looks like he's dealing with injuries. He may call it a season. His contract was structured so that he's kind of got an exit clause so that he can kind of move on if he's ready to part ways with Belichick after the season. If he wants to play 2 more years and the Patriots are ready to retool, like he could be done. Like this could entirely be the last ever Tom Brady start in Foxborough for the Patriots. I'm more than happy to take 4.5 points in this, to lay 4.5 points in this spot. Given that he's going up against a quarterback in Ryan Tannehill that's never had a playoff start before. Ryan Tannehill takes way too many sacks. When he's taking sacks, it's largely because there's good coverage. The Patriots can cover well. The Titans really only have one receiving threat in A.J. Brown. I think you can do a damn good job of locking him down with Stephon Gilmore. Gilmore did not look great last week, but clearly something was bothering him. I don't think that you would expect that same type of performance again in a playoff environment. And this would be a good spot here for the Patriots defense to cover well, force Tannehill to hold on to the ball too long and get key sacks and maybe even some turnovers on third down here, because Tannehill, while he has been great down the stretch here, he is not as good of a quarterback as the numbers would bear out. He is largely feasting on below average pass defenses, and he can do one thing well. We've talked about this. He can throw the ball into tight windows on the sidelines in like the 11 to 20 yard range, and the Patriots can cover that fairly well here. So I don't think we see an especially explosive performance here from the Titans offenses, which is what they're going to need to keep up with the Patriots, because the Patriots are going to be able to score on this Titans defense that has some pretty huge holes. So I don't mind laying the points here with the Pats.
And speaking of laying the points, Drew, so look, 5 is obviously a pretty dead number in the NFL. If you minus 5.5 at 2.06 at Matchbook, there's -5, -6, 2.11. If we're thinking that the line is kind of going to get towards 6, towards close to kickoff, are we probably better off taking an alternative handicap at plus money?
I would look for an alternative handicap plus 6.5 probably is the final number I would look for, because in all likelihood, Patriots are going to have a 2-score lead in the fourth quarter of this game. Like that's how the game state plays out. This is not the kind of back and forth, keep team with the ball last wins. I think the Patriots, control the entire game state. And have a 2-score lead late, which means the Titans will be, trying to scramble to get, they'll say, close the 10-point gap, and they're going to kick a field goal late instead of going for the touchdown and then try for the onside kick. Like that's how this likely plays out if it's a 2-score game late, which means the Patriots, most likely margin of victory is 7. And so I would look for Pats at -6.5. We can get that at a nice plus money price.
Yeah, 2.2, which is 6 to 5 in fractional terms at Matchbook right now for those people who love the fractions. Just on a comment in from one of our viewers, TVR again, the last 7 games for Patriots show Brady is a below average QB. Prof, before we've written off Brady before, mate. Yeah, you're chief culprit of this.
Yeah.
Is it the end of the road for Brady? Okay, let's say he gets through this. I can't see them getting through the Chiefs, guys. I just can't.
Yeah, I think it is the end of the road. Like I've never seen a loss like that one to the Dolphins. Really, like I know it wasn't necessarily Brady's fault, but it just shows you the strength of the team is the defense. That's the reason they're 12-4. That's kind of why they're a good team, because the offense, I think Adam said, was 14th or so in efficiency. It's fine. It's not going to win you a Super Bowl. And if the defense can just be carved up by just chucking up YOLO balls to Devontae Parker, then they've got no chance.
Okay, let's lock in -5.5. I'm going to take there. So I'm going to pick something in between. There's 4.5, through one to 6.5. Let's go -5.5, 2.06. That's just in case there's a missed extra point, which is very, very common nowadays with Patriots kickers. So who's kicking for the Patriots there now? Kai Fairbairn?
No, he's on the Cowboys now. I can't keep track of the Patriots kicker, but it's worth noting the Titans kicker is nothing to write home about either. This has a potential to be a pretty ugly kicking game, especially if it looks like it's going to be kind of mild and rainy. Probably going to be in like the high 30s, low 40s, and some rain on Saturday. So could be an ugly game for the kickers.
How can it be an ugly game for the kicker when you have the greatest kicker in history of the NFL and good old number 2 Nick Folk?
Oh, there you go, Nick Folk. Yeah, and then another ex-Jet, ex-Cowboy as well.
Nobody better.
Hey, speaking of outside players here, who's a good offensive coordinator this year? Arthur Smith, Drew Dinsick. Arthur Smith, hell of a play caller. I'll never let you live that one down. Look, ultimately, I was right on Kellen Moore. You were wrong on Arthur Smith. All right, guys, let's move on to Sunday's games. Right, Vikings Saints 7.5. The main line at Matchbook open at 7. Total open at 46. It's all the way up to 49.5 right now. And I'll start there with you, Adam Chernoff. You loved 46 earlier in the week, 49.5 now. Tell me the reasoning why you jumped on that 46. You're ultimately right, by the way.
Well, I mean, now it's getting a little bit high. It's still going to go higher. So make of that what you will. But we're looking at 2 offensive matchups for both sides that are extremely favorable. Talk about the Saints first. So number 1 in pass success rate offense. And I've talked, everyone here on the show has talked about the limitations of Drew Brees throwing the football deeper down the field. He's the lowest in terms of deep passer attempts over the course of the season, the games he's started. So like the Saints offense has adjusted extremely well around him. It's not a detriment to the offense. It's just a limitation that they have, and they've been really good at scheming around it. And that's why they show up so high in success rate when we're looking at what requires a successful play in the NFL. First down, you need to pick up at least 4 yards. Second down, you need to pick up at least 4 yards. Third down, you need to pick up the first down. And so the Saints extremely good at doing that just because of how they are offensively. And so matched up against the Minnesota Vikings, they play some of the tightest press coverage in the league. And because of that, they're in the bottom 5 for the season in terms of defensive pass success rate. So they're great overall as like an efficient defense, and they'll show up really high in the efficiency numbers. But down to down, it's extremely vulnerable secondary in the Minnesota Vikings. So from that matchup, it's very favorable for the Saints. Vikings rely on a lot of edge pressure to take the load off of their secondary and reduce a little bit of that the pressure that's on their shoulders. The Saints are extremely good at blocking that. If there's something that Drew Brees doesn't like, it's when the pressure comes right up the middle at his face. Minnesota, not very good at generating pressure in the middle, but they're very good off the edge. So the Saints extremely good at blocking for that. It's going to allow Drew Brees to step up in the pocket. And then you get Michael Thomas. Likely it's not going to be a team where Minnesota is able to double him successfully. They're going to find space moving the football down the field. I don't think the Saints have any issues, and they can really put up anywhere from 24 to 30 points. We've seen them against these top 12 defensive teams throughout the course of the season, and they're averaging over 30 points in those games. They played 4 of them so far this season. On the other side, it's a very different look in the Minnesota Vikings. Offensively, they use a lot of play action. Kirk Cousins, among the top QBs in the league in terms of play action usage, has a great success rate out of it. The last time we saw the Vikings, he struggled. It was another narrative game for Kirk Cousins and primetime Monday Night Football. And I think that's gone a long way in sort of suppressing this total, but also inflating that point spread out a little bit for Minnesota too. When I look at them against the Saints, Dalvin Cook comes out this morning. He says that he's 100% ready to go. Probably not entirely true, but he's going to be out in the field. He's back with Minnesota. We know the difference he makes. And my big question is the Saints defensive line, they suffered 2 huge losses in the San Francisco game, and they haven't been tested yet. As many yards as the Titans put up, there was no Derrick Henry in that game for the Titans, and Tennessee still went for 120 plus on the ground. So this is going to be by far and away the most difficult challenge for the Saints, dealing with those injuries and absences on the defensive line against this outside zone scheme for Minnesota. And they run the football at the 3rd highest rate in the NFL. And when the running game is working, that sets up everything else in their offense, and it just makes them click that much more. So I think that this is a huge test for the Saints, and those absences on the defensive line that's going unnoticed. It's going to open up the play action. It's going to let this offense get the shorter down in distances. And then we have to look at the Saints secondary. 3 starters on the injury report to begin the week. Not expecting any of them to miss the game, but there's certainly going to be limitations. And if you get Kirk Cousins pushing the ball downfield, there's chances for big plays. When you look at Minnesota 5th on the season in explosive play rate throwing the football, this is where both offenses have a ton of success. We're going to see this game play into the 50s. 49.5, okay, it's getting a little bit high. Obviously, these numbers move quite a lot. You want to drop that stake down a little bit at this number, maybe get creative with other ways to play it, but certainly a game where we can see a lot of points this wildcard weekend.
Prof, I get the feeling that Dalvin Cook, and he obviously said, like Adam said, he's 100%. It just rely on him too much. He's at the 2nd most receptions, which is nuts for a running back, especially a running back who, is pounding the ball. Adam Thielen's not done much. Adam made a pretty good case there, but I just can't see how the Vikings get a W here.
I don't think they win the game at all. I do think the Saints are, one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the league. I mean, Adam pretty much hit it bang on the head. I agree. He covered the game pretty comprehensively. I think it probably goes off 50.5, and I like the over at this number as well. I think what to add, Saints number 1 in offensive success rate this year. I think best in drive success rate. Over the last month, they've been, I think, the best offense in the NFL. And then the Vikings corners, the 2 of them are in the worst 5 in the league in completion over average. So basically, especially with air yards. So if you throw deep on them, then they are there for the taking. If the Saints do protect as we expect them to, then they should just cook those corners. And then it kind of forces the Vikings to play optimally. I think it will force them to throw deep to Thielen and Diggs. And I think Thielen has been banged up for the last 2 months or so, but he's had plenty of time to rest now. Diggs is one of the most efficient receivers in the NFL, and the Saints can be had deep. They're 7th worst in yards per attempt on deep shots. So I think the Saints go out, put up a load of points, and then the Vikings are forced to throw their way back into it. And I think we get a bit of a barn burner.
Drew Dinsick, barn burner for Brad Allen in New Orleans. What are you thinking there?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree. The opening total on this one was woefully short. 46 was a head scratcher. When talking to Andy on our Sunday night, our Sunday night scope, we were, kind of postulating, what do you think it'll open at? He made it 50. I made it 51. Just off the top of my head, I was thinking, there's this is a bad matchup for both defenses. Like, I can't imagine that they're going to give us a crack at a total under the key number of 47. Sure enough, they did. So I'm pretty well loaded up on some of these poor opening totals. But I'm feeling it. If we see it 50.5 come Sunday, I'll probably come back and grab some under, because there are a couple of different game states where I could see this. Yeah, I could see a number of different game states where this kind of lands right around 47, 48, 49 even. And I'm also getting a little bit more. I don't see this as a Saints runaway. I don't see necessarily that this is just a big, blowout game here for the Saints, because they're that much better than the Vikings. I think the Vikings can go score for score with this team, and I think it may set up a scenario where you do see some scoring early, and you do see kind of a game tighten up a little bit down the stretch. So maybe in line for a second half under, depending on how the game state goes. But in the last couple of years, we've seen Breeze get tight in some of these big games. We've seen them have to kick field goals instead of score touchdowns when they're in the red zone against teams of equal strength. So there are a couple of red flags here for me that this is going to just sail over comfortably. Brad, I thought mentioned a couple of key personnel for the Vikings, for sure. Diggs. is going to be a very tough cover for the Saints because Lattimore can do a nice job in one-on-one, but his help from the safeties on the Saints this year has just been nowhere to be found over the top. So that's going to be a tough one for him. And the Drew Brees can't necessarily take advantage of where the Vikings are the weakest on defense. He's not going to be throwing precise balls 15, 20 yards down the field, which is where you can really make him hurt when you have your second and third wide receiver get a little bit of separation against their poor coverage. And, after their, after whoever, if they double Michael Thomas, you'll have some opportunities to hurt them down the field. And I'm not sure Drew Brees can necessarily make those throws anymore, which means he's going to be relying a lot more on getting those high percentage 5 to 10 yard throws, and the Vikings linebacking core has done a really nice job of covering those up. And at least maybe they're not going to prevent completions, but they're certainly going to limit yard after catch, which may make this kind of manifest more as a chess match here as we get into the second half of this football game. So I'm gonna hold off on getting more involved in this total and see how high it gets before coming back on some under likely. And I think Vikings, if we see Vikings at 8.5 even, like if this really starts to kind of generate momentum here, people all talking up the Saints are the best team in football. They got hosed being here in the wild card round instead of having to buy in a home game next week. Yeah, that's all true. But this is still a really tough matchup for them, and the Vikings are a legitimately, they're a good team. Like we have them as 2 points better than the Packers, and the Packers have a bye this week. So this is not going to be an easy test for the Saints, I don't believe. So I'll probably grab some points once it gets up to 8.5 if we see that. But more than anything, this sets up as probably one of the more magnificent teaser legs of the season on the Saints, because I do think the Saints eventually get the win, move on here. They have a great special teams. The kicker can make clutch kicks from 50 yards. They're in a controlled environment. I think the Saints eventually get it done here, but I'm not seeing this as a walkover by any means.
Well, look, speaking of teasers, obviously a match we can do ACCAs now, and we've more or less sided with the 3 home favorites going through this. You can back that ACCA 2.75 currently a matchbook. There's a lot to get through that, Adam, doesn't there? Like a 3-way treble of a money line even into Sunday. There's a lot of potential pitfalls, especially with the Texans maybe.
I don't know if I'd be running to back that one, but yeah, it's interesting.
What's the general consensus here? So, guys, over seems to be. I don't think it's going to be our massive bet, but even a 49.5, I think that's the general consensus between the 3 of you guys. Anyway, so yeah, let's just get to 1 or 2 comments here. Brad, we'll comment in for you here. I think this guy is actually your mate here. Awful trader Brad Allen is a below average better. I think this is actually one of Brad's mates, so this is what Brad's mates say about him,
His Twitter handle tells you all you need to know about him.
Yeah, that guy sounds awful.
Yeah.
What a loser.
There you go. You got a cricketer in there as well, probably. No time for that. All right, we'll stop the Brad bashing for a couple of minutes anyway. I'm probably going to stay with you here for this one. Seahawks, Eagles getting 1.5. The line opened Eagles, I think, at -1, 1.5. And Drew, I'll get you in a second because I know Andy loves the other side of this in your podcast. The Seahawks. Prof, I'm in agreement with you here. I think the Eagles should be favored there. We're obviously maybe going to get it. I'm looking at Drew on the screen right now. We're definitely, and Brad, this is going to be you and me against the guys here. Okay, make the case why the Eagles should be the fav here.
Well, I mean, this line says the Seahawks are 4 points better, doesn't it, roughly? It's saying they're quite clearly the better team here. And I don't really see how you can justify that other than sort of through an injury report. But the Eagles injury report doesn't look that bad to me. So it obviously this is all speculation at this point in the week. It's Wednesday now, and obviously we don't have a game for 4 days. But it looks like Lane Johnson should be back. Ertz could be back. Obviously, the running back Miles Sanders should play. Brandon Brooks is going to be out, which is obviously a blow. But who's the interior pass rusher on the Seahawks that you're worried about? There isn't one really. It's obviously Jadeveon Clowney's the only real threat, and he's going to be rushing at Lane Johnson, I would expect, who should be able to handle him. Obviously, the Seahawks, I think they're getting Quandre Diggs back, but they would also be missing Michael Kendricks, the linebacker, tore his ACL. So I don't think we can say that the Seahawks are in a much better injury situation. So all season long, well, early in the year, the Seahawks were the Eagles. They're being graded quite well by PFF. Carson Wentz was grading well, but there was just a lot of small losses. There were drops and kind of silly mistakes. And a lot of people going, the Eagles are going to get it together. And now it seems to have. Last month, they're just under 28 points a game, won 4 straight to close out the season. And it seems like this is kind of what everyone expected is now coming true. And now suddenly they're home underdogs to a team with like a bottom 3 defense. I think the matchup in the trenches on the offensive line, the Eagles are top 5 in the league, and the Seahawks defensive line is not that good, as we've already gone over. And then the Eagles defensive line, 6th best in the league by PFF, going up against a Seahawks offensive line, which is bottom 5 in the league. So I don't think it's dissimilar to last week's game where, like the Niners pass rush should be all over Wilson. He might get away eventually, but again, I think it might be too late. I think the Eagles are going to score their points, and I think they should get enough pressure on Russ that they should eke out a narrow one.
Drew Dinsick, if, and it's a massive if at this point, if Doug Peterson gets this Eagles team to a divisional round and then to a conference game, this will be a better job than even the Super Bowl. And they have had so many injuries. When Greg Ward Jr. starts becoming a household name, you know how bad that injury crisis really is.
Oh, I like Greg. Greg's good.
Yeah,
he's better than
JJ Arcega-Whiteside. He's another household name. Yeah, he's really good. Yeah,
that guy stinks. Your point is fair, but I mean, you have to put Doug Peterson taking Nick Foles, third, fourth start of the season and running the gauntlet of the NFC, beating the Patriots by scoring whatever he got, 40-something points in the Super Bowl. Like that was an all-time coaching accomplishment. I don't think you can ever take that away from him. But for sure, we have not seen as good a coaching performance by Doug Peterson over the course of this year as we have in years past. They were very lucky to win the NFC East. It took a historic kind of meltdown from a much better team in the Cowboys to hand this division to the Eagles. Otherwise, they would be sitting at home trying to reevaluate their future. Carson Wentz is a good quarterback. It's bizarre. I've never really been on board with the takes one way or the other about Carson Wentz all season. People kind of consistently just hammering him for taking too many risks, for pushing the ball down the field too much. And I'm like, why are we hammering him for that? And now he's getting all of this glowing coverage for just taking the checkdowns, taking what he gets. But I'm not seeing that at all in the field. I am seeing a very effective 2 tight end set that is working for them. I'm seeing an incredible performance by Miles Sanders. By the way, Saquon Barkley's running back mate at Penn State, who performed way better than Barkley did over the last half of the season, which goes to show you why you don't draft a running back number 2 overall, even if he's a generational talent, I guess. But yeah,
Dave Gettleman, what a
yeah, brutal, just brutal. And I think they've got something good going with what pieces they've got, but I'm not really ready to get on board with this offense being a dynamic point scoring machine that can go toe for toe with Russell Wilson. And the Russell Wilson we saw against San Francisco was the kind of guy that I am actually I'm legitimately excited about the Seahawks' potential to run the NFC. They have a very, very reasonable, they have a very reasonable path here. I know that I don't think that the price on this game reflects value on the Seahawks. I'm not saying that they should be much more than about a 50-50 shot here in this game. But get past the Eagles in this spot, you get another matchup with the 49ers likely. That is a coin flip, in my opinion. And you have a Jimmy Garoppolo who has never made a playoff start in his life and not such a great home field advantage in San Francisco. And I think a third game between those two sets up well for Seattle to get the victory. And at that point, you're likely looking at heading to the Green Bay Packers after the Packers, go head to head with Drew Brees outdoor in 0-degree temperature, freezing rain up in Lambeau Field. So it's probably it's probably silly to be looking at this, but I'm involved now on Seattle at 14-1 to win the NFC. I think that manifests a ton of value. And the way that this team played and the fact that they are as healthy as they are with some of the key pieces, I think the rest of the teams in the NFC should be somewhat concerned because I think pretty clearly Russell Wilson is the best quarterback in this conference. And I think this even with the brain dead coaching that they've had at times this season, I saw a lot in that San Francisco game that looked to me like Schottenheimer kind of figuring out what he has at his disposal and how best to use them. Like the Chris Carson injury might go down as one of the more fortuitous injuries over the course of this season, because you take Schottenheimer's binky away from him and now he has to be a little bit more creative of how he's moving the football. And he did it brilliantly in the second half against the 49ers. That was magnificent. And, the loss of Dwayne Brown didn't really hurt them. And, Russell Wilson is still a magician at eluding the pass rush. This, and all of his receiving weapons are, his full complement of receiving weapons that are dynamic. This is a scary Seahawks team, and I'm not saying that they're going to run away and blow the doors off the Eagles here and lay whatever points they're asking. Like, I think it's a reasonably tight line, fair price at 1.5 here. I just think they're being largely overlooked because people are looking at them like they're going to have to go on the road 3 straight weeks and get wins. Well, why not? I mean, they've had two weeks of being comfortable at home. This is a team that's consistently overperformed their expectation on the road all season. I think this is your dark horse to win the NFC.
Two things. I absolutely love how you're going balls to the wall and putting Seahawks as NFC winners. Love that. And the other thing, if you do not get overconfident that Brian Schottenheimer is going to put 2 games back to back. And Adam Chernoff will tell you this as a Jets fan when he was the OC. This guy, you might get him right 1 week, but he's up against Jim Schwartz this weekend as well. Give me Schwartz any day of the week. Adam Chernoff, I think you like the Seahawks here. I don't know if you like them to win the NFC, but make the case for Sunday night in Philly.
How can I follow that up? We were bashing the Seahawks all season, and then without notice, we're just going to completely flip on them. I love it. I think this podcast is over.
Well, no, who's the better quarterback in the NFC right now? Legitimately.
No, I don't think that there's any quarterback in the league that has more value to his team specifically than Russell Wilson. I can't disagree with a lot of what you said. And look, let's just bring it back to this game. There's no way that the Seahawks can't be favored because we saw the same matchup, same venue a couple weeks ago, and there was an extreme adjustment there as well, right? This one opened 2.5 for the Eagles back mid-November. That got adjusted through 0, and it ended up closing. The Seahawks were as high as 2-point favorites in that market, much like we're seeing now. It came back a little bit at the end. So I was surprised, to say the least, to see this number go all the way to where it opened. I don't know how necessarily true some of those openers were, but nevertheless, we saw a bit of an adjustment. I don't think you can get to the point where you were looking at what was happening. I think the game was like 5-6 weeks ago versus now and make the case that much has changed. Yeah. What I will say, and I think that this is getting highly neglected for the season, and we mentioned this last week, there are 2 teams in the NFL that finished top 10 in passing, rushing, success rate, both offense and defense. One was the Saints. The other was the Philadelphia Eagles. So I think that gets neglected to an extent. I think it's pretty impressive that the Eagles were able to do that with all the injuries. And then 2, if we look at this run that the Eagles put together to end the regular season, the knock is going to be on them offensively with all these injuries and not having receivers. They've put up more than 400 yards in the last 4 weeks in all of these wins. So it's not like they've had issues moving the football, and they've actually put together really strong game plans in each of these situations. So, to me, getting involved with this game, if I want to look Seattle, I get concerned because the Seahawks defense, I think you'd put it just slightly ahead of Tennessee for the secondary as a whole and what they're able to defend. And some of the numbers you look at, they're bottom 8 in terms of success rate. Their efficiency numbers are horrific as well. So if it's tough to sort of handicap this and look at how the Eagles can piece together passes to running backs and tight ends and stuff, but you add in the linebacker injuries now for Seattle. And it's a weird thing that the Eagles keep putting up all these yardages. And it's a bit of a sort of, when you look at it, like if we came into the season, the popular thing was running backs and tight ends. And they're almost proving that to like the highest standard, relying on all these guys to the extent that they are. So it's interesting to see them sort of push this forward. But for me, this is not likely a game I'm going to bet side or total, especially at the moment. Let's see if things change and I sort of continue to work through this and find some more within it. But I'm kind of hoping that Seattle wins this game because the prospect of backing them going into San Francisco next week, I think, is one of the more appealing bets that we're going to see this entire playoff. So I kind of hope that matchup sets up, but as someone with some Eagles futures from earlier in the season, is still going to be looking for the Eagles. But I really hope that we get that Seahawks 49ers game matching up next week because that's a very nice look, to say the least, on Seattle.
Yeah, myself and Brad have some of those futures too. Drew Dinsick, you had a question.
Yeah, I guess, Zach Ertz still not cleared for contact. Are we expecting him? Because I think he's a pretty important piece. We're not, right?
Hey, he's not cleared for contact. He's got a couple injuries. Sanders was back at practice today. He says that he might go, but Aguilar is going to be ruled out as well. So if Ertz can't go, that's another pretty enormous blow within this matchup for sure.
Yeah, if you can hear the audio there, I think there was a helicopter went over Drew's head, but we'll get him back in a second once said helicopter has passed.
Yeah, I told my helicopter pilot not until 11:30. I don't know why he's doing this to me.
He's heading to the Rose Bowl. Brad Allen, come on. I think we can nearly get Adam over with us, because let's think about this for a second, right? Yes, the Eagles haven't played much in the last couple of weeks, but is the Seahawks defense exponentially better than the Redskins, Cowboys, Giants? I don't know if it is, Brad.
It's not at all. And I think what might be useful to think about is, so they went off this price as it is now for that game 4 weeks ago, whenever it was. But I would say that was like a perfect storm of injuries. That was the first week where all the receivers were out and they were running out JJ Arcega-Whiteside, and he was crap. They didn't play Greg Ward. They hadn't worked out these two tight end sets and all this kind of thing. The two tight end sets weren't working initially. And I would argue that the sort of last month or so shows that they have figured out how to play with what they have now. They obviously, when they came into the year, they wanted to be this 11 personnel, Deshaun Jackson, Aguilar in the slot, whoever else in the third receiver. They've changed that, and it is now effective. And I just think if you give Wentz time, and I think he will have time because this offensive line is much superior, then he just will be able to go up and down the field. One way of getting at it would possibly be first half, because then we kind of get the maximum benefit of the coaching edge, I think, because even if the Eagles are up 17-0 at half time, you wouldn't feel safe because Russ will come slinging his way back in. So I think first half, if you can get first half Eagles plus a half, I think you've got a cracking bet.
Okay, it's not a bad angle. Eagles first half. Okay, guys, just want to bring in one question, a really good question from Nicholas Wade, who's been in touch on YouTube. And Adam, you're going to love this one. And I actually kind of like this one as well. Sitting on a Chiefs to win Super Bowl ticket at 12.5. I think they're currently 7.0 at the matchbook now. Hedge or let it run? Question mark. Any advice, guys? Adam Chernoff, I'll go to you first, because you've been on the Chiefs for the last couple of weeks on your own Simple Handicap podcast. Advice for Nicholas: stay on it.
100% let it run unless you need the money. Plain and simple. If you need it, hedge it out, take it, but let it run. Absolutely.
It's January. Everyone needs the money. Drew Dinsick, what are your thoughts on it? That's a hell of that's a nice look. 12.5. The Chiefs know that home divisional game coming up.
It's an insane number.
I would the hedge I would look for, I think, because the only value I see in the AFC, and it's not a ton, is still on Baltimore to win the AFC. What do you make that line? That's probably Baltimore minus 5.5, 6-ish against KC. Baltimore. I have them about 3 points better on a neutral. I don't know that. I don't know that they match up especially well with Baltimore, especially having lost Thornhill. I think he was kind of the key to stopping Lamar Jackson, and now he's done. That's problematic for the Chiefs defense. It's a fine. That number is incredible. Great work locking that in, and they are absolutely live to win the Super Bowl. And if they get to the Super Bowl, I would favor them over any of these NFC teams, any one of them. Saints may be the only one that I would have even close to a pick 'em. And so it's a nice number, but you are still going to have to live through some very excruciating moments of Andy Reid clock management at the end of playoff games, which is not going to be fun. It's going to be sweaty. Maybe look for some in-game positions if the Chiefs have comfortable leads. I would look for those type of middle shots as opposed to truly hedging out of that position.
You don't need clock management if you're up 14.
You don't? How much were they up against the Titans? I can't remember.
There you go.
Were they up against the Titans?
Alex Smith was quarterback. Don't worry about that. I was going Patrick Mahomes. Brad, any thoughts? Any opinions here for Nicholas? Stay put or hedge?
Let it ride. Come on.
I actually look. I'm not after timing this. This was my pick for the Super Bowl, along with the Eagles. I thought they were going to play the Eagles. I don't think the Eagles are going to the Super Bowl. I think they win this weekend, but I don't think they're going to the Super Bowl. One other comment there again, Team Everman again. It's Andy Reid's year to win the Super Bowl. True, it is Andy Reid's year. Look.
Hey,
He has got to win it sometime.
If it happens, nothing but love for Andy Reid. He of all of the coaches who are in the mix right now, no one deserves it more. I think, but you're going up against probably the most dynamic offense that we've seen in the NFL in years in terms of the various ways they can attack you. I worry about the Chiefs' run game and their ability to put away a lead on top of just Andy Reid's decision making. Like there's a couple of things about the Chiefs that are a little bit red flaggy. Whereas when I look at Baltimore, I see a complete team top to bottom and advantages at basically every key aspect, including the decision making with John Harbaugh calling a plus EV strategy and approach. So it's going to be interesting to watch it play out. And the AFC Championship game has sort of a pseudo Super Bowl feel to it, in my opinion.
I'll float this out there before we get to wrapping this up. So the one spot, if you look throughout the course of the season where the Ravens have struggled, the handicap's always how do they do against the opposing run defense, and that's sort of the focus. But if you look, the games they struggled, the opponents have had really good secondaries because it prevents that pass. And I don't think anyone's going to stop Baltimore from running at any time this season. It's all about stopping the pass and then preventing those high leverage 3rd and 4th down conversions where the Ravens have been insanely above average. I don't know if Buffalo goes into Houston and gets the win, but I don't think there's a worse matchup for Baltimore outside of KC than Buffalo. So that gets awfully interesting if Buffalo gets that win and has to go into Baltimore. They played them extremely tight in Buffalo. Going to be an awfully interesting look if they end up getting that. That price is going to be pretty big, but that's going to be an interesting game if that comes to fruition, to say the least.
Whole lot of answers are going to be in the next couple of weeks in the AFC. It's both divisions, obviously both conferences. Fascinating. Let's do a quick bet recap, guys, before we get the best bets. So we're liking Texans -2.5. Another one there, guys. Let's maybe lock this one up because we won't have a play in the last game. Texans under 43.5 in this one, guys. What are you thinking? Texans Bills.
I vote yes on the under. I think the under is the strongest angle on that one.
I go under there.
Thoughts? Yeah, I'm kind of thinking that as well.
Go on then.
What's 44? What's 44? Do you have that?
44? You can get 44 at 1.87. Yeah, maybe it's a key number. Let's maybe take that. And if it lands on 44, we get the push and we get our money back. Let's take 44. So on the under there. Pats -5.5. I took the little middle there. You guys wanted to go 6.5. I took 5.5, 4.5 currently a matchbook, and Saints over 49.5. But I would suggest that Saints one, that number's probably gotten away. It's probably not our best one. Stake accordingly. All right, guys, best bets. If I had to offer you one bet, I know you're probably going to play more, guys, but if I had to offer you one bet at the weekend, Drew, let's start with you here. What's your best bet of the weekend, man?
Yeah, I'm laying the points with the Patriots. I think that's the best bet.
Okay, what kind of number are you happy to lay the 6.5, like you said earlier?
6.5 works for me, yeah.
Again, good plus money at that, Adam.
Yeah.
Sorry, man.
My best bet is that total, but not at 49.5. So I would go Pats with what's available right now. If I would go better number, I'd go 4.5.
Okay,
that's just
take 4.5. Brad Allen?
Houston -2.5 for me, please.
Houston -2.5. My best bet, Drew, you're going to love this. The Eagles money line straight up. They will beat the Seahawks. This is probably the ballsiest thing I've ever done. I'm going against you, Andy, and possibly Adam this week. Like you're the guys.
Here's the beauty of it. You're getting plus money on the money line, right?
Yeah, at home.
Guess what? Every single Seattle Seahawks game is 50-50.
Yeah. Fair.
You can stop it right there. And there's enough pluses and enough minuses that it should be a 50-50 game. If you're getting plus money, that's fine. The key is that at 14-1, if you're looking at they have to win 3 50-50 games, likely their path being their most likely path being Philly, San Fran, Green Bay. Like I give me 14-1 all day on that.
You're talking me into Seattle. That's making me very uncomfortable.
Sully, can you do winning margin bets on the NFL? You got access to that? Because surely Eagles or Seahawks by 6 or less.
Brilliant, yes.
Surely no.
There's
no way this isn't being decided with 2 minutes.
It's a one-score game for sure. Yeah.
You can do a bit of Dutching with that then, Prof, on both sides of it. So probably not a bad angle. I just do like
Iron cross teaser.
There you go. I honestly do believe that the Eagles defensive line will get after the Seahawks offensive line in a major way. I just don't know how much time Wilson will have to get the ball down the field. They're my thoughts on it. Okay, guys, anything else to add? I think we're all good. Just under the hour, guys. We get to watch Alabama, Michigan. Bam, we've only got 7 points so far. Drew down 10-7 at the end of the first. So it could be a long evening yet before we're back in Oregon. And, we're back in Oregon for the Rose Bowl +3. And if any guys are watching on Wednesday night, obviously when you're listening, you've got Wisconsin. Oh, jeez.
Yeah, -3. Yeah.
Drew, what are we going to do now? Profs on Wisconsin.
Oh boy. Oh wow. What do you know?
Yeah. Rose Bowl. Hey guys, there you go. As ever, an absolute blast. Thanks for watching today. Thanks for listening today. Best of luck with your wildcard bets. I think we've got some pretty good ones locked in, and hopefully you enjoyed the debates that we had. Best of luck with your bets. Enjoy wildcard weekend. We'll chat to you next week.